Okay, 33. Crassus then said, not only in this particular Catullus, but in many others, the grandeur of the sciences has been diminished by the distribution and separation of their parts. Do you imagine that when the famous Hippocrates of Cos flourished, there were then some of the medical faculty who cured diseases, others wounds, and a third class the eyes? Do you suppose that geometry under Euclid and Archimedes, that music under Damon and Aristophanes, that grammar itself, when Aristophanes and Callimachus treated of it, were so divided into parts that no one comprehended the universal system of any of those sciences, but different persons selected different parts of which they meant to bestow their labor? I have indeed often heard from my father and father in law that even our own countrymen who were ambitious to excel and renowned for wisdom were wont to comprehend all the objects of knowledge which the city had then learned. They mentioned as an instance of this Sextus Elias, and we ourselves have seen Manius Manilius walking across the forum, a signal that he who did so gave all the citizens liberty to consult him upon any subject, and to such persons, when thus walking or sitting at home upon their seats of ceremony, all people had free access, not only to consult them upon points of civil law, but even upon the settlement of a daughter in marriage, the purchase of an estate, or the cultivation of a farm, and indeed upon any employment or business whatsoever. Such was the wisdom of the well-known elder Publius Crassus, such that of Titus Coroninius, such that of the great-grandfather Scipio, my son-in-law, a person of great judgment, all of whom were supreme pontiffs, so that they were consulted upon all affairs, divine and human, and the same men gave their counsel and discharged their duty in the Senate before the people, and in the private causes of their friends, in civil and military service, both at home and abroad. What was deficient in Marcus Cato except the modern polish of foreign and adventurous learning? Did he, because he was versed in the civil law, forbear from pleading causes? Or, because he could speak, neglect the study of jurisprudence? He labored in both these kinds of learning and succeeded in both. Was he, by the popularity which he acquired by attending to the business of private persons, rendered more tardy in the public service of the state? No man spoke with more courage before the people. None was ever a better senator. He was at the same time a most excellent commander in chief, and indeed nothing in those days could possibly be known or learned in this city which he did not investigate or thoroughly understand, and on which he did not also write. Now, on the contrary, men generally come to assume offices and the duties of public administration unarmed and defenseless, prepared with no science nor any knowledge of business. But if any one happen to excel the multitude, he is elevated with a pride by the possession of any single talent, as military courage or a little experience in war, which indeed has now fallen into decay, or a knowledge of the law, not of the whole law, for nobody studies the pontifical law, which is annexed to civil jurisprudence, or eloquence, which they imagine to consist in declamation and a torrent of words, while none have any notion of the alliance and affinity that connects all the liberal arts and sciences and even the virtues themselves. 34. But to direct my remarks to the Greeks, whom we cannot omit in a dissertation of this nature, for as examples of virtue are to be sought among our own countrymen, so examples of learning are to be derived from them. 7 are said to have lived at one time, who were esteemed and denominated wise men. All these, except Thales of Miletus, had the government of their respective cities, whose learning is reported at the same period to have been greater, or whose eloquence to have received more ornament from literature than that of Pistorius, who is said to have been the first that arranged the books of Homer as we now have them, when they were previously confused. He was not indeed of any great service to the community, but was eminent for eloquence at the same time that he excelled in erudition and liberal knowledge. What was the character of Pericles, of whose power in speaking we have heard, that when he spoke for the good of his country against the inclinations of the Athenians, that very severity Wilter which he contradicted the favorites of the people became popular and agreeable to all men, and on whose lips the old comic poets declared even when they satirized him, as was then lawful to be done at Athens, that the graces of persuasion dwelt, and that there was such mighty energy in him that he left, as it were, certain stings in the minds of those who listened to him. Yet no declaimer had taught him to bawl for hours by the water clock, but, as we have it from tradition, the famous Anaxagoras of Clazomename, a man eminent in all the most valuable sciences, had instructed him. He accordingly, excelling as he did in learning, judgment, and eloquence, presided at Athens 40 years together with civil and military affairs. What was the character of Critias, or of Alcibiades? They were not indeed useful members of the state in which they lived, but were certainly men of learning and eloquence, and were they not improved by conversation with Socrates, who instructed Dion of Syracuse in every branch of learning? Was it not Plato, the same illustrious philosopher, too, who formed him not to oratory only, but to courage and virtue, impelled, equipped, and armed him to deliver his country? Did Plato then instruct Dion in sciences different from those in which Isocrates formed the renowned Timotheus, the son of Conon, the eminent general, and himself a most excellent commander and a man of extensive learning? Or from those in which Lysis the Pythagorean trained Epaminondas of Thebes, who perhaps was the most remarkable man of all Greece? Or from those which Exaphon taught Agesilaus or Archytas of Tertanum, Philolaphus, or Pythagoras himself, all that old province of Italy which was formerly called Great Greece?